In our last chapter, Carthage was turned to ash. The great rival was erased from the earth. Rome, the city of wolves, had conquered the world. The Mediterranean was no longer a sea of many nations. It was Mare Nostrum, our sea, a Roman lake. From the deserts of Syria to the shores of Spain, all bowed to the eagle of the legions. Untold, unimaginable wealth flooded the capital. Gold, slaves, and grain to feed a growing empire. Rome was victorious, Rome was eternal, and Rome was poisoned. Success was the deadliest toxin. The Republic was cracking under the weight of a global empire. The rich, the senatorial class, became gods of wealth, their fortunes built on conquest. But the men who won that empire, the common soldiers, returned home after years of brutal service to find their farms bankrupt, their families destitute, swallowed by the vast estates of the very men who sent them to war. A deep, burning resentment began to fester. The stage was set not for an external enemy, but for a war against itself. Politics in the late Republic was no longer a debate. It was a blood sport. The path to power was paved with intimidation and violence. Gangs loyal to rival politicians roamed the streets, and the Forum became a battlefield. The old rules were breaking down. A dangerous new precedent had been set. The army was no longer loyal to the Senate. It was loyal to the general who paid them, who led them to victory, who promised them land and a future. Generals like Marius and Sulla had already shown the way, marching their own armies on Rome, slaughtering their political opponents in terrifying purges. They proved that a loyal army was the ultimate political argument. The state had lost its monopoly on violence. The Republic was a hollowed-out shell, waiting for one man, one warlord with enough ambition, enough charisma, and a powerful enough army to finally kick it over. The world was holding its breath, waiting for a savior. Or a tyrant. Enter Gaius, Julius Caesar. Born to an old but impoverished noble family, Caesar was everything the Roman elite feared. He was brilliant, he was charming, he was a masterful public speaker who could captivate the mob. He saw the path to ultimate power lay not in the corrupt Senate, but on the battlefield. His chosen arena was Gaul Moderne France. For nearly a decade, Caesar waged one of the most brutal military campaigns. He slaughtered 1 million Gauls and enslaved 1 million more, an act of horrific genocide that he broadcast back to Rome. In his famous commentaries, he wasn't just a general, he was his own publicist. To the common people, the plebs, he was a superstar, a living legend conquering new lands for Rome. To his soldiers, he was a god. He knew their names, bled with them, and promised them a share of the spoils. He forged the most disciplined, fanatically loyal army on the planet. And back in Rome, the Senate was terrified. They hadn't approved of his war, but they couldn't argue with his success. They saw his statues rising in the city, heard the crowds chanting his name. This was no mere general. This was a potential king, a title the Romans had despised since they first founded their republic. His rival, Pompey the Great, and the conservative senators. The optimates decided Caesar had to be stopped. He had to be brought to heel. The order came from the Senate. Caesar was to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. To face prosecution for his actions in Gaul, it was a political death sentence. For Caesar, there were only two choices: obey and face ruin, or commit the ultimate act of treason. In 49 BC, he brought his legion to the banks of the Rubicon, the small river separating his province of Gaul from the Italian heartland. To cross it with an army was an unforgivable act of war. He hesitated, knowing this single step would plunge the world into chaos. Then he uttered the famous words, "Alia iacta ista," the die is cast. He crossed. Civil war was inevitable. The senators, led by Pompey, fled Italy. Caesar swept through the peninsula, not as a brutal conqueror, but as a liberator. He then hunted Pompey's armies across the globe, from Spain to Greece, finally defeating him in a stunning victory. He returned to Rome not as a general, but as its undisputed master. He was made dictator, then dictator for life. He controlled everything. But in a fatal miscalculation of mercy, he forgave the very senators who had fought against him. Men like Brutus and Cassius, they saw his power not as a solution, but as the death of Roman liberty. They called themselves the Liberators. On the Ides of March, they cornered him in the Senate. A conspiracy of 60 men, armed with daggers hidden in their robes. They swarmed him, the first blow, then another. He was stabbed 23 times. In his final moments, bleeding out at the foot of a statue of his great rival Pompey, he saw a man he had mentored, a man he loved like a son Marcus Junius Brutus. His last words, Et tu, Brute, you too, my child. The tyrant was dead. The liberators stood, their hands dripping with Caesar's blood. Proclaiming they had saved the Republic, they were wrong. This was the great, tragic irony of it all. In their desperate attempt to kill a tyrant and save the Republic, the assassins had only killed the Republic itself. They hadn't restored liberty. They had unleashed anarchy. In the power vacuum that followed, a new civil war erupted, one that would last for 13 more bloody years. And out of that chaos, one man would rise, a man with Caesar's name, Caesar's fortune, and none of Caesar's mercy. His adopted son and heir, the young Octavian, he would hunt down and kill every one of the assassins. He would defeat all his rivals, and he would stand alone, the sole master of the Roman world, rebranding himself as Augustus, the first Roman emperor. The Republic was dead, a ghost haunting the marble halls of a new autocracy. The dream of liberty was over. The Roman Empire had begun. The death of the Roman Republic serves as a timeless warning about how freedom can be lost. If you want to see how the empire rose from these ashes, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. Check out the rest of our ancient history playlist right here and let us know in the comments what story you want us to tell next. Thanks for watching.